she comes. Here comes the technical genius. That's right.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the resumption of the October 19th business meeting of the Cypresswood Community Association. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Next slide, please, Savannah. I need a motion and we need to do the roll, excuse me.
All right, Mr. Secretary.
Like last week, if you would let me know who you are when I call your association. Club Patio,
I'm Jim Hammond, Vice President, Club Patio.
Cypress Pond,
Vic Brennan.
Eagle Pond,
John Wood, President.
Enclave,
Martha Palmer, President.
Fairway Patio,
Tom Barrett, President.
Garden Patio,
Richard Luciu, President.
Golf Villas,
Neil Murphy, President.
Greenfield Village,
Steve Potter, Vice President.
Meadows,
Bill Shira, President.
Oak Grove,
Mike Howell, President.
Palmacia,
Linda Goodrich, President.
Plantations,
Rick McCallum, President.
Sand Hill Lane,
John Gilbert, Vice President.
Villas on the Green.
Jeanette Rain, President.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I need a motion and a second to approve tonight's meeting agenda, please. Mr. Shire, Mr. Brett, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Next one, please, Savannah. Tonight's agenda is a 2021 assessment. Next slide, please. Here's the public comment section. Mr. Tucker's going to take the microphone and work our way through that list. Each speaker, as a reminder, each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. If your subject matter has been stated, we respectfully ask for the sake of the meeting attendees that you do not repeat that same point of view. Mr. Tucker, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Laney Sutton, you're first up, please.
Robert, you may have to slide.
And please speak to the board.
Good evening. I have two questions about the pool. If we're going to have it resurfaced, is it possible to take one of the stairways and make it a ramp so people that can't do steps can enjoy the pool also? The second question is, has the pool been inspected by the county health department about the refurbishing the pool, or has it been inspected? Is that why we're resurfacing?
Do you want to use your time for us to answer that question for you?
Yes.
Okay. May I?
I don't know how many times the pool has been inspected, but there's a regular rotation of inspections.
Inspected about a month ago.
Okay.
Has it any detrimental comments from the inspector?
The inspector has said, wow, you're looking like you need to work on that thing.
Yeah, it's
No requirements at this point. We're trying to get ahead of that curve. Is that fair, Mr. President?
They have marked it as a violation. It's not a, what they call a cease and desist where you have to do it or else you have to close the pool.
Well, if you don't consider a ramp, I greatly appreciate it. I'm sorry, I'm sure so many people would,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you.
We have two stairways, let's have a ramp. Okay?
Thank you, Laney.
Thank you. I got to turn my
You
lights
bet.
on.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, you gotta get out of my way now.
We have next up, is it Gary or Carrie Carter?
Gary.
Gary Carter, please.
Okay, so we all understand that assessments are going to happen. Labor goes up, materials prices, they increase. It's just the nature of the beast. However, we feel, Greenfield, my president asked me to share this, we think that there are some things that will make this a little bit easier to swallow. Bids. We feel like bids, CCA should obtain bids and estimates for everything they spend money on. Those bids should be made public, should be on the CCA website for people to see, and that will shut down rumors. Number two, he wanted me to bring up, if the assessment passes as it is right now, we would like to see some concession from Bob and the golf course about some 4 rounds of golf per household. If you played, fine. If you don't get them. You can't save them. You either use them or lose them. Financials, they want financials online, even though they can come and see them anytime they want to. He feels like it would be a good idea if those were online and people could go look at them. She touched on this briefly, but we're just looking for an explanation on the pool. Why the price went from 120, for, the first meeting was 50, then somebody said 70, and so we just like an explanation on why that's happening. And the elephant in the room, Greenfield would like our pumps. That's been going on for a couple of years, and we think it should be resolved. Number 6, you may or may not have control over, but ever since CDC and everybody else has relaxed their requirements for COVID, if people don't want to attend, they can do the meeting on Zoom, that's fine. We're all wearing masks. There's no reason to shut the neighborhood out. We should have this meeting open to everyone. And if you want to require masks, that's fine. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Mary Ann Ledman? Is it Lehman? Ledman, I'm sorry. Lehman? Sorry about that.
All right, no relationship to anybody.
You must have a relative somewhere.
Oh, not here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm from New York originally. People used to say, is that like the governor? No.
No, you-
No. So I'm Mary Ann Lehman, and I'm from Burksdale Court. And I just have some questions.
Okay.
So has the budget ever been considered without the $300 per household? And would we still make our financial commitments if that's how the budget was passed? Would we still be putting anything in reserves if that's how the budget was passed? I also had a question about the pool. If we didn't have that extra $300 in the budget, what happens if the inspection comes back and says we have to fix it now? And if the budget is passed without the $300, do you think we're putting ourselves in a hole? And are we looking at a much higher assessment next year? And I guess based on that, is there concern of another large loan in the future if we don't pass the assessment now? I want to thank everybody who's on the board. I know you're all volunteers and elected. We do appreciate the fact that communication is improving.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Oh.
answers or not?
I think when you hear the presentation tonight, you'll likely get answers to your questions. Is that fair, Presidents?
And if not, then we can answer it.
Yes.
And
We'll circle back.
Okay, thank you.
Jean Burkhart, please.
Jean Burkhart, Fairway Patio Homes. First, I'd like to also say thank you to the board and this committee. I know that you spend an inordinate amount of time, and not just the time in this meeting, but preparing for your own HOA meeting, preparing the agenda, attending those meetings, and doing walks through the neighborhood, at least mine does, to talk to the neighbors to understand what they're thinking. So I do appreciate it, and hopefully everyone else does. Sometimes you're listening to gripes, sometimes you're getting nasty emails, but you're always there and we do appreciate it. Your residents don't come to this meeting because they really don't have a say. They're out there. We appreciate this public comment, but they elected you, and then your board passed you on as president. I think that's important to know because last week was a clear indication of how people feel in the neighborhood, and obviously they were quite angry. A 43% increase in dues, I think is just outrageous. Can you imagine asking your employer for a 43% increase or Social Security for that type of raise? The request is not representing your neighbors and their needs. After $2 million in loans, expecting the golf course and restaurant revenues to cover the perceived shortfalls should be in play here. Or the board needs to do what our homeowners do. They list what they need to do, what they want to do, and prioritize them when the money becomes available. You need to look at, someone already mentioned reserves. There are 2 types of reserves according to 720. I don't know if this board is a different chapter in the Florida law, but there is mandatory and voluntary reserves, and you ought to know the difference in what you can pull from and what you can't. The board, I think, should plan a strategic planning meeting. What it sounds like when I've attended these meetings is that the committees get together, they hash out for hours on end what it is they want to do for next year, present it to the board, and things pass as the committee wants them to, because that's the easiest way to do it. Surely those that come from a business world has heard the saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think that the board would do itself justice by either in December or January of every year holding a real strategic meeting. Plan what it is you really, really need for that year and not take into account individual committees as a whole, but understand what the community as a whole needs. And another way to look at the budgeting, because it seems,
Sorry, Jane.
thank you. There was a lot more.
Fred Wilson, please. Fred.
Thank you. Cypresswood, as you know, is one of the oldest premier gated communities in Winter Haven. The benefits, the amenities are the key factors for ongoing success of the community. With a deed-restricted community comes the responsibility to have a strong, well-run community organization. In Cypresswood, we've grown to 14 HOAs. As an HOA president, you wear 2 hats. One is to assure the bylaws, amenities, and benefits provided by the community as a whole are supported, funded, and maintained to keep Cypresswood a premier community. The second one is to be sure that the residents of this community completely understand what it means to be a part of a deed-restricted community. If your residents don't understand that, that means that you have a duty to help them learn that. Some of the residents may not be happy with the things that are proposed, whether locally or with the CCA, but the vast majority of the residents of Cypresswood like how the community is governed and is funded. For the most part, those needs do not vary much from year to year, but the cost to maintain those keeps going up. With that being said, wouldn't it be good to have a financial support to help reduce the pressure on the residents of your HOA? Over a year ago, you were talked about it. You were proposed a transfer fee program. You were provided the information to implement the program. To date, only 1 HOA has implemented that. Let's take a look at the possible income that could be generated from an adopted program. Let's say 75 homes sold in Cypresswood next year. That transfer fee would approximately create $75,000, and that $75,000 would be distributed down to your local HOAs. Think of how that could help reduce the pressure that your residents are experiencing. There's a lot of fake news going around Cypresswood right now, and if you're helping generate that fake news, then you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Bottom line, President, you have a responsibility to do everything possible to get the best value from the funds, supporting both your local group and the CCA. Maybe you're a new president, and you need to understand things better. Get help. If you've neglected your duty to develop and present programs that can reduce the cost of your income, your CCA or your local, if you've neglected to work as a team member, if you've neglected your duty to counsel and represent your entire base, then just what are you doing to help keep Cypresswood a great place to live? Those of you who are leading the charge in Cypresswood, thank you for your long-term work and what you're doing. If you're still in the learning process, then stay at it. It will pay dividends in the long run. If you're new, don't forget you wear two hats, and each hat you deserve equal treatment to make the association good. Thank you. And Winter Haven Hospital needs blood, so go ahead and donate tomorrow if you can.
Nice PA announcement there, Fred. Karen?
I'd like to know if I could take my 3 minutes and hand it back to the lady that didn't finish her.
Sure.
Can she have my 3 minutes?
Well, I think that would be nice.
Yes,
You
she
okay?
didn't finish and she needs to.
You want all 3 minutes?
Yeah, she needs all her.
Well, she won't take, I saw her notes, I don't think it's 3 minutes for her.
Well,
But
I'll let
she's
her
never,
know.
she's never
I'll stand
been,
right here and she gives what she doesn't use, I'll pick up on. How about that?
we'll make it work, okay?
She needs to finish. She made some very
She
good.
did.
Okay, we were talking about, oh,
There
sorry.
you go.
I don't speak loudly.
That's okay.
Instead of asking what each committee wants when we're talking about the budget, what if we say, here's how much money you get, work a budget toward that goal. It's the way big businesses do. American Express told me how many applications I was going to receive in a year. If it's 1 million, I knew how much it cost me to process that. Not what would I like. I'd like a lot more people than I have, but I don't get it. The board should also meet and give and take money. So if the committees are going to meet separately, you've got your pool of money, here's what you would really like. And instead of just saying, okay, let's add it all together and make a budget, sit in a strategic meeting and swap monies if it's needed. I've looked at the board. I think, Fred Wilson, you have actually reduced your budget for next year. Traffic only went up 2,000. What can be done to pull down some of these others? Or give your excess money to someone that needs it. The other important budget item is sales and revenue. With $2 million to improve the golf course, what are you expecting to receive on the cash side? Maybe you don't need it from us. Shouldn't $2 million be enough to increase? Now, I know the golf course has not made money in the past. This is the year that should change. And it's not just the golf course also, it's also the restaurant. At the end of last meeting, a $37,000 budget was passed for amenities within 1 minute. They asked for the money, they took a vote, 100% of the presidents voted for it. Why isn't there a line item? The only thing I heard is it's going to cost $1,500 to paint the men's bathroom. There are very good painters that work in here. I'm using one now. I can tell you it does not cost $1,500 to paint a men's bathroom. And the men that destroyed it, maybe you can get a paintbrush and fix it up. 2 days later, after last week's volatile meeting, this group met again, and instead of really coming to terms, I think what I heard is that presidents were berated for not voting yes. And what's it going to take to convince you to change to yes? Let's turn that around, and what's it going to take for those that voted yes to make it fair for our residents in here and figure out a budget a different way. Whatever budget is prepared, line item detail when they go to spend it should be needed. I said that. So thank you for your time this evening, and please vote no tonight on a 43% increase.
Thank
Can I
you.
just add one thing? Can I just say one thing?
Well,
Just one thing. We have,
can you say one thing? That's,
yeah, I'm a motor mouth. Okay. We have brilliant minds in this neighborhood. I'm looking around at people I know that are retired. Put your heads together in the businesses that you've run in your past. This country, people say, is democracy. It happens to be a republic for the people, by the people, which we stand. And, you know, I appreciate all of the people in this room that volunteered. How many people in this room get a salary? How many? How many are getting a salary in this room? Are we all volunteers? I know one salary.
I don't get a
No?
salary
You don't get a salary at all to run the golf course.
from the LLC.
Okay. Anybody else in here on salary in this room for this community? Well, that says a whole lot, doesn't it? Your time is all worth something, and I appreciate it. I have had a voice at times that people didn't appreciate, but you know, I'm the mouth of the South, amongst other things people have called me, and that's okay. I'll wear it. It's mine. I got a t-shirt. But you know something? We have a beautiful community. I moved here because it was just like Diamond Head in Mississippi, where I was from, that Katrina got tore it all to pieces. I drove in here, and you know what they told me at the gate? You can't get in. I had looked for 3 weeks for a home, and had given up and was fixing to go back home. I came by here, and if you'd ever been to Diamond Head, Mississippi, here it is, without the airplanes and the hangars. This is my home, and I love it, and this is my biggest investment. I'm retired like so many others. And you know, when you do this budget, remember, people are living on a limited income in here. It's called retirement. And you have to make those nickels, dimes, and pennies stretch. Remember that. There's no more. Most people in here are living on Social Security in this neighborhood. 10%, I believe, play golf. That's 90% that we have to, in here, take care of our biggest investment, our homes. We have to make this golf course work. It has to work. I fussed the last time about the hay behind my house. I don't want cows back there having to be fed. At least they clean up, you know, what's being cut. But at the same time, this neighborhood has to work. And remember, we have to work together. I love my home. I don't play golf, but anybody that knows me knows I love the outdoors. Love flowers, I love trees, I love people. Even though I stay home and I'm a recluse, I love my home. I love this neighborhood. God bless this country that we live in. God bless our neighborhood. And we pray for one another in this world that God has given us. Let's come together and make this work. We can do that. We can. Let's try.
thank you, Kate. Okay, that's done with the public comments for the evening. Next slide, please. Okay. Mr. Shira, please come and give us some comments about reserves and cash, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. My name's Bill Shire. I'm president of the Meadows. I also work on roads and drainage. As we began to look at how we're going to get through next year, and we began to discuss availability of reserves, the committee I work on gets involved in most of those reserves, so I chose to took a space in this. This is a look at what we're going to look like at the end of this year. And at the end of the year, we'll have unrestricted cash available of about $210,000. That's a good thing. We also have a road reserve in the amount of $264,000. We've been setting aside money to replace pumps, and we have a little less than $140,000 there. Traffic control is accumulating money for the eventual rebuild of their facility. And we have money set aside in the tune of $16,000 for a potential front entrance rebuild, who knows, 5-10 years down the road. So that's $631,000, and that's really a whole lot of money. Slide, please. Yeah, there we go. Now, these are our anticipated first quarter needs from the $631,000. First thing is we have to have operating cash. Day one, bills have to be paid. New money hasn't come in. The checkbook balance typically operates at about $50,000 to $55,000. Second thing is we're going to be repaving the entryway Boulevard from 542 on back to the four-way stop. We have a quote for that at $188,000. That's the best quote we've received. The stormwater pump that's on the Peace Creek Canal on the east side of our community is the oldest pump we have. That pump is currently operating and operating at about 60% efficiency. We know that pump has been limping along for quite some time. We maintain a backup tractor pump over there, and the capacity of that tractor pump and the pump that's in place is in excess of what that basin needs. It operates at better than 8,000 gallons a minute. We really only need 6,000 there. But the point I'm making is we have never been without pump service there. Now, the price for that, we don't really have it yet. There's three components to put that together. We thought we could get near that for about $150. We're finding that the cost of building the water gathering side of it is going to be much higher than we anticipated. And we're working on re-engineering that part. Mark Klutnar is handling that. I prefer he spoke to you about it in lieu of me. I'm not an engineer, but what I can tell you is we're not happy with that pricing, but we know that next year we're going to replace that pump. We're waiting on some other information to come back to us, and we hope we can get it below $200,000. For the moment, I can't speak to it for less than $250,000. The next thing we have is the total, and that's $492,000 out of the $631,000 is going to be gone in the first quarter. Now, that leaves $138,000 in our reserves. I will tell you that $76,000 of that must stay in the road reserve. We have another road project coming up in 2023. We'll need $175,000 for that project. Slide, please. So and there's my comment to that. The reason I went through that is I wanted you, the presidents, to understand that we do not have reserves that can be used to fund a deficit should we not move forward with the proposed budget. We will run out of cash, I would guess, probably in the summer. The unknown to all this is what will the golf course revenue look like. The only pattern that we trust that we can look at is going back 2 years ago and 3 years ago and looking at what the number of rounds were like and then looking at the type of pricing that is being put in place. So as we consider this budget, consider this, and please don't consider the fact that we think we have reserves available.
Next slide, please, Matt. Mr. Tucker, is your TAC chairmanship?
What's your step? You got it?
No, look like me dressed. I can't, got a mask on. Okay.
Excuse me a second. I put my name in. Are you done with everybody that wanted to talk?
No, not at all.
Somebody got 6 minutes, I didn't get 30.
Well,
Mr. White, he is on it. We missed him. So he can.
I'm sorry, sir. Please
We-
come
we-
up.
We just missed you, Tim. Sorry, he just missed you.
Thanks for coming up.
What?
Yeah.
Oh. I'm so sorry. There you go, sir.
My name's Tim Weiss. My wife Kathy is in the back row with me. We moved here permanently from Ohio about 3 weeks ago for retirement. We've been golfers for, well, our first date was 41 years ago on the golf course, and we've been playing around ever since. A lot of golf. So we retired here because I thought the golf course was going to be nice to play. We play 3 times a week when we don't have cancer, which we've had in the last 3-4 years. But I guess my question, Bob, to you is your groundskeeper here?
Is he here?
Yeah.
No.
Are you in charge of him?
I am.
Okay. Is the golf course going to be ready for this weekend?
Yes.
Sure doesn't look like it.
It's ready to go.
It's pretty rough. But anyway, besides that, I've worn every hat that you have worn in the last 50 years. I worked on a golf course through high school and college. I taught golf. I ran a bar and a sports bar and a restaurant that I owned that had to make money or I was out of business. I didn't have the luxury of getting dues from people to supplement the problem. I look at this beautiful building. It's nice. It's beautiful. But it's the cart pulling the donkey. It's not going to make a dime ever unless the golf course gets play. We got to bring people to this golf course. Same with the pool. Same with the tennis courts. They will not make a dime. They're a hole out there taking money. And for us to spend money, I want to spend it where it needs to be returned. Our return on investment on our homes is only for the golf course. And it's your job to bring the people here. I suggest we think outside the box and maybe get somebody to build a motel here for golfers and people at Legoland. You know, like they can bring, you know, you could get groups of golfers in here. But I really believe that, I mean, this is beautiful. It's going to lose money. When we had our golf courses, which I've seen 3 come from cow pastures to very, very successful, they were owned by individuals, and they had to make money or they were out of business. We didn't have a big clubhouse. We rented out the clubhouse, and they all lost money. It's you're going to lose money unless you can put people in the seats and pay the electricity and everything else. So my suggestion is for you, stop wearing so many hats and concentrate on that golf course. I haven't seen you ride by, but I'd like to take you for a tour. I think you're barking up the wrong tree that the golf course is ready. It looks terrible.
You're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, John. Sorry I got past you there, sir. Okay, back to the sources and uses of funds. That's banker talk. You have sources of funds. Last year we had assessments, 1,061 units at $700 each. That brought in $742,700. We are projected to have expenses this year of $818,000. That's a budget shortfall of $75,000. Kind of rains on our parade, doesn't it? Next slide, please. We invested this year in the golf course so far $822,000 through October. The remaining funds are about $65,000 based on unpaid bills that we looked at today. The board is reminded that all the loan funds are expected to be depleted by the end of the year. So there are no more loan funds. It is up to us to support our club and all the facilities and amenities. Next. Okay.
So as we look at the budget overview that we've prepared, and we've been talking about for the two meetings and the workshop, the recreational amenities had a $494,500 budget that was approved by this board on 9/21, as well as the reserve for the $120,000 that was approved at that same meeting. The general administration, utilities, and reserves, the general reserve was passed on the 9/21 meeting as well. The road and drainage of $151,700 was passed in August. As well, at that same meeting, the traffic control budget was approved at $141,780. Landscaping was way back in July at $98,342 for a total budget need of $1,061,001. Divided out by 1,061 homes, that is $1,000 per unit. Does everybody understand the budget overview? Okay, next slide, please. So we need a motion, if there is one, to accept the $1,000 assessment. Mr. Shire has made such a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'd like to, it says questions and comments.
That'll be after the motion, ma'am. We'll get there. Is there a second? Mr. McCullough has made such a motion. Now there's questions and comments from the board, the presidents and vice presidents. Come on up to the X, please, Mrs. Rain.
I'm going to go back just a minute because these are questions that have been brought up to me. And one was the pool and the negative inspections that you've had, and that they told you that they would close this down. Is that true?
On the inspection report, there's a place there for the tile finish, and they've been checking that off regularly, and that will be an area that they will close us down at some point if that becomes unsafe.
All right. Well, actually, I spoke with Donald Floor today.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, over the years, he said, yeah, I keep telling them they need to resurface. But we never said we would close it down. And we never said that it was in such bad shape that they had to do something right away. I just wanted to bring that up so you knew that. I also have people who have asked me, the two $1 million loans, they've asked me, and they wanted it from this board, what collateral was promised, and what happens if the loans go into default, what happens to that collateral. I'd also like to ask, please, to also do the handicap entrance for the pool because it is prohibitive for a lot of people, as well as a handicap bathroom stall, both the men's and the women. Let's see, we're talking, and I guess I'd also like to say that we need to re-roof our area, Cypresswood Villas on the Green. We need to redo our roads. We started out thinking we could do the roads and piggyback off of there. But Mr. Klutenhauer gave us an incorrect estimate of what was for somebody else. So it was what we have to do is almost twice as much. We can raise ours 2%, but we're not going to be able to do that with having to pay this for a golf course. If the pool is fine, except for the refinishing and some of the tiles and things like that, it can be still used. It doesn't need to be closed, but that's, $120,000 that could come off the budget for this year and go on next year. But I'd like you all, the ones who are deciding whether you're going to vote yes or no, along the line, we have to give something back to what we need to do for our individual homes. But just remember, that pool inspection information was not correct.
Okay, Mr. Tucker, do you want to answer questions about the loan?
I can do that. The collateral for the loan and the basis that the bank made the approval was on our ability to assess and pay the loan payments. We went from, 382 to 400 one year. We went 150 and then 150. That's 300. That $300 generates $318,000. The debt service on the loans, the two loans, is $182,000. So we cover the loans. We've done our job. However, it is important to note that reserves and the lack thereof can really make the bank uncomfortable. We must think about reserves. Is that enough, Bob? Does that answer the question?
She asked about default.
What happens if it defaults? If you default?
We don't, Jeanette, we don't even want to think about that.
I'm sorry, but that question was asked me.
Well,
I need an answer.
the assessments are already passed that cover the loan. So why would we default? We always have enough to pay the loan. That's an attorney question, and I'm not an attorney.
They're gonna get their money. You may not be able to play your other
It isn't a pretty result, Robert. You're correct on that. So, no way do any of us, but your homes are not in danger. There's no direct track to your home. Maybe that makes you feel better.
Well, that's what they wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Well, I can address the pool a little.
Mr. Brennan, he had his hand up first.
I'm Dick Brennan. I'm the acting president until day after tomorrow when David Cramp comes back from his plane up in North Carolina. And I've met with Bob twice, yesterday and today. My presentation last week was organized using figures that I had at my disposal. That's the budget of 2021, the amenities committee funding requirement of 2021, and the numbers of rounds played supplied by Bob, and to anticipate the income if we had 100 rounds per day, 80 rounds per day, and 60 rounds per day. Well, I found out all those numbers are wrong. I learned that the first 4 months of the year is when we are rewarded with the dollars from the golfers. The other 8 months, we probably lose money. So now, based on a monthly average, back in 2017, if we charged $22 for green fees, we're going to charge 30 and 40. But if we charge 22, that would still give us enough to fund the amenities from the budget worksheet. If we have 50% of that money, it would still fund that, the amenities. However, many of the board feels we cannot make a judgment based on speculation. And in a sense, I agree. And with that, I think we're trying to do this, and it's very, very bad timing because we have people that have been laid off, unemployed. We are losing the income from all of our Canadian friends. and we have the potential loss of golfers because of the COVID-19. Of our 17 residents, I've got the smallest HOA in the community. We have 17 residents. 16 voted no. And who am I to vote anything other than what they want? I don't own this place. Each resident of the HOA association should base their voting on the residents' vote, not on what their personal feelings are. And there's one thing that I had learned many, many years ago, and if you say, who is at fault, and you don't know what you're voting for, then the answer is simple. It's the presidents of the HOA that should be informing everybody. And as a final comment, I've heard some bad comments about Bob Shape. I think he's doing an excellent job managing the facilities. And I can remember the old saying, walk a mile in his shoes and then make your comments. Remember, he's a resident of Cypresswood also. That's all I have to say, Bob.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do you want to answer the question about the pool? Yes.
She can go first.
Okay. Just-
I'll try and answer the questions about the pool if I can. First of all, one of the ladies said that we have to be careful with reserves, and you cited the 720. The CCA is not that, falls under that statute, so whatever you think applies does not to the CCA. That's just a very different statutorial requirement. Let me start off, I'm going to talk about the pool specifically, but I have to go back in time. When this was approved in 2017, and I was made chair of the Recreation Amenities Committee, the first thing we did was start off by getting a lot of estimates, not quotes, but estimates of what it would cost to fix the golf course, to fix the pool, to resurface the tennis courts, everything we could think of. Then we put them all on a list, and we started with who's on first, okay? The decision was made, number one, if something is broken and the law says it has to be fixed, it gets fixed first. That did apply to some things in the pool. That also applied to the gas leak in the kitchen. Secondly, whatever generates revenue gets fixed next. That's the golf course. This is no longer a private club as it used to be when the Woods operated it. So the residents have the amenities. The pool does not generate money. It is an amenity. The tennis courts do not generate money. They are now an amenity, and they're all set up that way. The original estimate for the pool was $120,000, and that was Mannix, okay. You've heard Mr. Tayson toss out another couple of figures. We are in the process of updating our figures now and also our options. Is it possible not just to re-marsite, but is it possible to do some kind of inner coating on it, some kind of pool liner? We're looking at all these things, but I want to get back to the pool. When the first loan money became available in January of 2018, we started there with the golf course. All of 18 is the irrigation and stuff in here. It wasn't just the golf course. Golf course was around, I want to say 76%. Then we moved the second year, and that's reconstruction of the greens. Great deal of effort went into that, and that was about 86% of that second loan. The thinking at the time was that when we hit the end of 2020, which is the end of 2 years, then we know for a fact by all of our records that we make the most money in the golf course the first 100 days of the year. We also know for a fact that HOAs pay their dues, 14 HOAs pay their dues to the CCA on a quarterly basis. The first dues are due January 1st. So if any of you sit on your HOAs and you think you can do zero-based budgeting, you cannot. You have to be ready to make that payment the first of the next year coming up. You have to have money for that. So with that in mind, think it pre-COVID, thinking that we would be generating money in 2021 and get our first fall payment, then somewhere in the winter to spring of 2021, we would be able to fund doing the pool. The pool has never been put off. It was never on the first of the list. It was the item that was going to come in after the golf course, when the golf course was going to be able to pay for it. And then the tennis courts are going to be repurposed. We're going to have at least 2 courts. I won't get into all that. However, COVID hit. That has really hurt us. We can't really apply now how much money we're going to make, and none of us on this board are willing to guess that we're going to make $1 million next year. We're not going to budget that way. So the pool was originally designed to be done next year for financial purposes. It made sense. It's like a dominoes going down, and then the next one gets hit. When it comes to handicap, we would love to be, if we built that pool today, we wouldn't build that pool. The deep end would not be as deep and the shallow end would not be as deep. And it would have a 0 entry, and we would have a kids area for it. If we wouldn't have the pool we have today, but we do have the pool. We originally looked at putting in ramps and making everything handicap accessible, and we ran into a governmental snag. And I won't go into it because it's about 2 years old and I'm not clear about my facts right now, but we are grandfathered, the whole building, this whole complex is grandfathered and not having to meet full ADA requirements. In other words, we don't have to do right now if we were building today, what we'd have to do, because we're grandfathered in. If I remember correctly, if we start meeting ADA requirements at the pool, we're required to do it everywhere. So putting in a ramp, or even one of those, we looked at this, one of these lift chair things, I don't know if you've ever seen them. I have, I went out and found one, I researched it. We have looked at that, and it is possible that if we get into doing those things, we now ungrandfather ourselves. So we have to look at that carefully when it comes to the pool. We are now getting new quotes for the pool and new options. Maybe we can get a liner. We don't know yet. We always price things out. We always look for what we can do. And I don't know where the pool's going to go now. We're not finished with our research. But I hope that that answers questions about why the pool was going to be done in the winter or spring of 2021, which was always the plan, and what we plan to do with it. If a health department inspector comes and says they can do that at any point in time. We've kind of been crossing our fingers. We know it needs to be done. That's not news. Okay? What Mr. Tassin has brought to the committee is ideas that maybe we have alternative ways to fix it. And we don't know yet. We're not ready to bring that up. We haven't researched it all yet. We're still working on that. Right now, we worked on the budget. That'll be worked on after the budget. I hope that answered the pool questions.
Thank you, Mr. Powder.
Good evening, guys. I'm not going to revisit a lot of things that have already been talked about, concerns and things like that, but does anybody think this is weird? I mean, I wanna go into that a little bit. I really wanna go into that just a little bit. I'm not trying to start anything, but we already voted on this. That's, to me, you know, when you vote on something and it gets voted down, that's usually where it stops. And then you try and figure out where you go from there. I'm not trying to start anything, it just seems weird to me. I'm not picking on you, I'm not. But I get asked a lot, where are these pumps? And we've known each other for 5 years. We've had a great relationship, and I've gone out with you to look at these things. But when I get asked the same question over and over again, I can only tell them, hey, it's going to be next year. We're coming up on our 5-year anniversary, you and I. I'm not attacking you. That's not what this is about. We've talked about bids. We've talked about the pumps. Another thing that's kind of just weird to me, Bob, I'm not attacking you. I actually happen to like you. But what I'd like to say is, whatever this loan thing is that's going on, whatever this thing is with the loan, I think the timing kind of sucks. Because we're having to borrow more money, and you've had this available to you. And I get it. I'm sure it's all legal. I'm sure that it's all done, but I don't like the idea of the money that we vote on and the money that we've decided to give to our community going to a loan. It's been brought to my attention, that's all. And we're still working on kind of like fact checking, for lack of a better term. I talked about bids. Well, actually, we haven't talked about bids, but that's just something that I'd like to get with you and maybe attend your RAC meetings. Yeah, I know.
They're always open.
I know I am. I know. So that's how, well, when you say it in front of a crowded room, you gotta do it, right? So.
They've always been open.
They've heard me now, so. Tim Hammond, yeah, Tim Hammond. I like a lot of the stuff he said in the last meeting. His alternative ideas about bonds and things like that. But he also said something I really liked. It's an old saying, but I know we have guys in here that have owned a business and have been a part of a business, but sometimes you have things like COVID that come around, and sometimes you have things like just a bad season. You know, you have bad seasons. And he said, tighten your belt. And that spoke to me. Because when I had a couple bad seasons in other lifetimes, in other lives, that's exactly what I had to do. Maybe not buying that new truck for the business, but maybe putting a couple of 100 miles on something else. So that spoke to me, and I like that. I like that. And then just concessions. That's been a hot topic. Getting something for the loan. We're not saying it's rounds of golf, but we think that there should be something, and I think that should be discussion. Whether it's a gym membership for 3 months, but we're still doing our work on trying to figure this all out, along with all of you guys. So, with all due respect, that's all I got. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Tassom, your Vice President, your board member, you can speak.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to be here with you. Last 3.5 years, and ladies. Last 3.5 years, I've attended every CCA meeting that took place. All of you have not done the same, and I know everybody has responsibilities they have to meet. I've also attended almost all of the RAC meetings for the last 3.5 years. Traffic control, all of the meetings. The Meadows HOA, all of the meetings. So I speak from someone who has sat and listened to the pros and cons of almost everything that's been discussed here tonight. I've also been rounding up a lot of information from the community about the things that are being discussed, what we might call in private, at least not at committee meetings, not at the CCA or not at our HOA meetings. I'd like to straighten out some of those things and also apply maybe a little bit of math. I know, Martha, you were, I guess, a little excited, but it's not 2 years, it's 3 years. The 2018 counts as 1 year, 2019 counts as another year, and 2020 is almost over, so that's the 3rd year. So we're in the 3rd year of trying to do what responsible people do. In 2017, we voted 12-2 to accept the responsibility of the amenities of Cypresswood Village. Big responsibility. In the early stages of the debates that went on, and we met then, back then, if you remember, weekly. I was with a lot of reservations about doing it because coming from another gated community, I understand not only the responsibilities, but the financial costs involved in having a swimming pool, having a golf course, having 6 clay tennis courts, and many other amenities. It's a very expensive proposition. However, back in 2017, we voted to accept that responsibility. And then we realized, after looking things over, that we had to borrow $1 million to help upgrade some of our amenities and especially the golf course. And we borrowed the $1 million, and I think we've done a great job with that $1 million, and you're enjoying some of it right here. Some of the grounds outside of our, if any of you remember what it was like in 2017 with dead trees falling over and hardly any flowering, any shrubs. It really wasn't a pretty sight, not inviting at all. That was all taken care of, and then we realized that the greens had to be replaced, and many meetings were held, much explanation to all of the presidents and vice presidents about why those greens had to be replaced and why it was going to cost another $1 million loan. And what did we do? We voted in favor of it. We all voted in favor of it. I was in favor of it. I had come a long way to realizing, all right, I've accepted the responsibility as vice president of my community to participate in developing what we had undertaken. And I have no qualms about the fact that we had to raise our dues, and I paid the dues like everybody else. Well, now we come to the point where we've had a real shortfall. Not the cause of anybody who is on the committee and works as a volunteer on other committees or any vice president or president. We did not create the virus. It came to us from overseas. So that was the biggest, I would say, inhibitor of our gaining funds. What we have to do now is come to grips, and I said this at another meeting where I talked, come to grips with what we're facing. We're facing a shortfall that requires us to come up with the kind of budget we have now. Requires us not to get in little clusters and say things like, gee whiz, here they tell us we're hurting for cash, and they put a $75,000 roof on this clubhouse to make it look pretty for November 7th. That isn't why there's a $75,000 roof on. As a matter of fact, at today's price, it wouldn't even be $75,000. But when the roof was going to come due, it probably would have been about $75,000. But we didn't pay that kind of money out. We had the good luck, if you want to call it that right now, of a wind causing damage and an insurance company meeting its responsibilities to put a new front for us with us paying the deductible. So once again, all through the community, this business about how can we spend that much money. Another thing with the pools, I was given the job, I would call it one of the terms I use, point man on resurfacing the pool. Now, if we're going to talk about resurfacing the pool, then I can get it done for less than $50,000. If we're going to talk about another project, which includes many, many things that has nothing to do with resurfacing, then it's going to cost a lot more. That was not the challenge I was given. My job was to be point man on resurfacing the pool. And I can tell you, I've had the state here, I've had the county here, I've had developers here, I've had pool contractors here, and we do not have to meet all of the specifications, as Martha pointed out, if we were going to, as we would have to meet if we were building a pool today, a fresh start. We are grandfathered in, and if we're just going to do the project of resurfacing the pool and some general maintenance that you would do, for instance, remove the ladders that are in the way and then put them back on again, that's not called redoing the pool. That's just general maintenance that takes place when you do the resurfacing. We can do that for less than $50,000. Now, if we're going to replace the pumps in the pump house and the plumbing in the pump house and maybe expand the pump house, yeah, that's going to cost a lot more money. That was not part of the project that I'm looking into. So why is there a difference, and why did the price jump from $50,000 to $120,000? We're talking about two different projects. That's why the price jumped. And the rumors going around, oh, they're just telling us $50,000 to get us to say yes for this $300 budget increase. That was not part of my project. Nobody asked me to make this talk tonight. I asked if I could. Why? Because somebody mentioned, I think last meeting, 1,500 hours. I probably have 3,000 hours since the middle of 2017. And I wasn't paid for it. But I'm involved. I live here, and I'm going to die here. Now, some of you maybe are hoping that the price of your house will go up, and you got ideas of making it $100,000 and then disappearing. I'm going to be here till the end. And that's one of the reasons why I'm volunteering so much time to all of the activities that go on in here. The bank loans. The bank loans have specific requirements, so I'm not going to go through it. But I read, as I get kidded about it, just about everything. As a matter of fact, when we had the lease, I was the only person, I'm pretty sure, who read from cover to cover every word of, I think it's 27 pages. And I brought up some things that weren't covered at all by anybody, and we got them straightened out at the meetings, including a very important one with Mr. Wood. Something that he didn't ask for in there, and was very willing to immediately straighten it out. And speaking about Mr. Wood, I don't know who sitting here thought that he was going to supply us with free amenities for the years that we lived here. I don't know who was told by a realtor that the amenities were paid for by Mr. Wood. You didn't have to contribute anything. What a deal. What a deal. So maybe some people didn't know that there were amenity costs that were being paid by somebody else, and that we were going to eventually, when Mr. Wood stopped developing our community, gets fully developed, which happened to the one I lived in previously, the developer turns the amenities over to the people if they want to take the responsibility. And you know what? We said we want it. We want the responsibility because we want the amenities. I was stunned at 7-7 vote. I was stunned by it. But the people who voted 7 no's are people who voted with the 14 yeses to get us to where we are. Now, I wasn't one of them because my president is another man who attends almost every meeting there is to attend, and he was there voting in my place because I would have voted in his place and voted the same way if he hadn't been there. But the rest of you, maybe not everyone sitting here now because there's some vice presidents, didn't vote yes. But your communities, your HOAs, did vote yes. I'm stunned by it even yet. I'm still stunned by it. Let me quickly give a couple of other things here. A nasty rumor. Bob has put up with so many nasty rumors. Here's another one. Bob's got half you people on his payroll. What? He can't make anything yet. You didn't get your check. Did you cash it? No, you didn't cash it because you didn't get one. Is there anyone here on Bob's payroll? If there is, would you please raise your hand to clear it for the audience? I don't see any hands going up, folks. There's nobody here on Bob's payroll. Nobody. Furniture in the lobby. TV set, which is nice because it shows some nice features about our community when you walk in, especially for guests that you might bring in here or people who may be coming in here because they're renting our venue and putting money in our treasure. I said, gee, isn't that nice to have that? Look at the golf course there. Look at this. Look. And somebody said, boy, I checked the receipts. No receipt for that TV set. How did they get it? See, they're hiding the money. They're spending it to make the place look neat, and they don't even have a receipt. And so I looked into it. It's not a brand new television set like the rumor says. More importantly to all of you, it was donated by somebody free. Free. It's a hard word for some people to even accept. Free. Well, if we go ahead with the pool project, and it's something we're still working on, and I have some bids, and I have material that should last us 10 years, and if it costs $120 to do it with Mars, and there is, I have checked with Marsite, if we did it with Marsite, it would probably cost us, by the time we got done, over $100,000, for sure. I've got a product, I've got three manufacturers with a product that says that the material will last at least 10 years. So we could do the pool 3 times and not have spent as much money as one Marsite, which would only last 15 years if you treat it real carefully. What do I mean by that? Make sure the chemicals are right, make sure that nobody brings furniture into the pool, make sure that people don't bring toys in that's going to scratch the Marsite. And no decisions have been made on that. No decisions have been made to spend $120 or $50, but I'm pushing for the $50, and I think we'll get it. I think when we get all the facts in. I don't know how some people do math. Now, I know what my HOA dues are going to go up. It's not half, it's not 50% or almost 50% of what I'm paying now. My gosh, I paid $1045 this year. 50% more is going to put me up to $1,600? I don't think so. I don't know where the 43% came in. But that scares people when they hear it. And they think, gee whiz, I better vote no. I've got somebody in my community who can't pay 43% more. Do the math. See what you're paying. Bonds. Our contract, I told you I read all of our contracts when I can get my hands on them. Our contract says we cannot have another investment like bonds. That's going in debt in another direction, as I understand what you talked about. Our contract forbids that. So some of you who said, gee whiz, I'd buy a bond. Somebody else says, well, I'd buy a bond. We can't do it. And it's just going in debt another way. We're not gonna borrow more money. We're gonna ask everybody, as my good friend that I'm getting to know better and better, Steve said, tighten your belts. This year we gotta tighten our belts and we gotta accept this budget. It's time. It's time to come to reckon the fact that we voted yes to take a lease from a man who didn't have the responsibility to provide us with a whole bunch of nice free amenities. And we took the lease. We voted yes. It's time then to think about the $1 million that we all voted yes to. And it's time to think about the second $1 million that we all voted yes again. It's time to vote yes on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other comments from board?
I'd like to say something.
Mike, this is for board members only, please. The public comment period of Mr. Howell.
Well, I don't read the Facebook, Cypresswood Uncensored. I don't go into social media. I've said it over and over. Somebody got up here and made a comment about Bob Shade making a fortune. Bob Shade volunteers. I wrote it down here for myself. In the 5 years that I've been on this board, my volunteer hours exceed 1,500. That's not even close to what Bob Shade gives this community in volunteer time. I don't know, he has Monday, quote, off. I don't remember the last time Bob Shade had Monday off. He only lives 3 houses down from me. And I very seldom see his car in the driveway except at lunch. He put his tax return up here 3 meetings ago to show his income from the golf course and the private lessons, which is all the income he gets. When the situation came up several years ago and Bob was elected president of the Master Association, at that time, there wasn't a president willing to take that position. It used to be that the bylaws of the Master Association required that the president be president of the Master Association. One of those board members had to take that job. Nobody would take it. So bylaws were changed, and Bob was elected to do it. And in the opinion of the overwhelming majority, I can't speak for you new guys that have come to the board in the past few months, but there's nothing happened that should cause anybody to criticize the way that he operates the LLC, number one, and number two, the way that he handles this meeting. I don't know anybody in this community who's ever called that man up that he's not been willing to sit down and go over whatever you want to go on. Every single president, all 14 of us, get the financials of the LLC, and we get the financials for the Master Association. Every single one of us get it. In my own HOA, Monique is our CAM. Now, every month, she mails us a copy of the bank statement and any violation letters that we've mailed out. And so not all 8 of the board members in Oak Grove get that same report. That's not true in all the HOAs sitting here. One of the things that it seems to me, and I've said it before, but I'm going to have to say it again. When you're running a business or you're running an operation like we're running here now, the first thing you do Just take all the free money off the table. And we had a president, he's the vice president of our Master Association. So he came to the board a year ago and he said, listen, if you do a transfer fee for new buyers coming in, and he put a number of $500 there, you have the potential, you take your number of sales per year, and that $500 is paid by the buyer, not by the seller. And it comes directly to your HOA. One of the members of his community was so against that whole idea that he went door to door in the community and convinced the residents that it would destroy their ability to sell their homes, and they voted that president out of office. So they didn't do it. I went door to door in my community last year, and I collected, and I explained it. I have managed to interview out of 75 residents, 56 of them were home when I came knocking on the door. And I'd already put out the agenda that this was going to be at our annual meeting. So we only had, out of 75 residents, we only had 20 residents represented at the annual meeting. But I collected by explaining, and I stood there at that door or sat in their living room until they understood what I was talking about. And I collected enough proxies to pass it in January of this past year. This is October. 8 homes in Oak Grove were sold this year. That's made us $4,000 for our budget. And it's in the bank. And I said this 3 meetings in a row now that we've had. Some of you don't even charge for an estoppel letter. The state allows you to charge $250 to do that. Well, we pay our CAM. When I became president 5 years ago, we weren't charging for estoppel letters either. So we set it at $150. We hired Monique to be our CAM. When our treasurer resigned and moved out of state, we didn't have anybody qualified to take it, so we hired a CAM. So this year, past January, I persuaded our board to increase the estoppel by up to $250, which is the max allowed by state. So that $100 goes direct. Everything above $150 goes to my HOA. So that's made us another $700. So if you add up the 8 homes that sold, that's $4,000. And if you add up the $800 that you made from the estoppel fee, that's $4,800 in 1 year. Now we may not sell that many homes next year. But what I said to the residents in my community was, if we do this, it won't. I've been in real estate 22 years. I'm still licensed active realtor. And I know from experience, the most money that sits at the table for most of us is at the closing of the buying of a home. So we put that $500 fee in, and it's worked like a charm. Our plan in our annual meeting in January is to increase that to $750. And we'll see where that goes. If it works, like it worked this year, even if the sales are not as much, then the next year I'm going to propose to the board that we raise it to $1,000. The end result of what we've done this year, if the board decided it, we could actually reduce the assessment from our own HOA to our residents by $20 a year, increase our road reserve from $4,000 a year to $5,000 a year, pay the first quarter assessment out of existing funds, and still have money in the bank. So that's part of it. Then somebody came up here and said that the presidents ought to, before they vote on anything, ought to poll the residents. That's not how government runs in the United States of America. That's not how your federal government works. That's not how your county government works. That's not how your state government works. That's not how the city government works. When you elect someone to serve on your board, if you get enough volunteers to even have a board, we have one HOA in here doesn't even have a board. Headed for a lot of trouble. When Oak Road, 3 years ago, got down to me and one other guy, I called John Wood. Now, John Wood and I don't always agree about everything. But he's given me over the years a lot of very wise advice. And we needed a board or we were going to have to merge. So he started contacting his friends in Oak Grove, volunteered his own service, got Bob to volunteer to serve on the board, and we had a board. And then over the next 2 years, those people fell away because as new people moved into the community, like Chris back here, and like Georgia. Chris is our treasurer, Georgia is our vice president, and we got people on the board willing to get involved. We've set up 2 committees. If you go to the Cypresswood master website, click on my neighborhood, go down to Oak Road and click on it. You'll be astounded what you see there. There's not another HOA in here has a website like it. And it's very easy. It's really, I hear people all the time in this community say, well, when I bought my house, they never said anything about an HOA. I never saw any of the governing documents. And I tell them, I say, I tell you what you do. You go pull your closing packet, call me up, I'll come to your house, and I'll show you the document that you signed because state law requires that you know where to find that information. But I've heard it so much that we formed a web committee in Georgia, and Chris was on it, and we have a tech guy that's on our board that's not here at this meeting. And so they built a website, and now if a real estate agent or a title company wants to see the governing documents, and that's a lot more there than that, they just go to that website, click that link, and the governing documents are all listed there. And it's not mixed up with a lot of other stuff. I can email that right to that realtor. I can email it to the title company. I can email it right away to the buyer. They can't come in and claim that. That $500 fee is a legal document that Mr. Disrosers wrote up for us. It's on record. It's official. So when we amend it to $750, we're going to amend it, and we'll make it official. You'll draw up the document for us. We're going to file it. There's things that we can do here. But in the meantime, talking about the current situation, some of you make it sound like, and some of you presidents and comments that you've made previously, you make it sound like the board hands over to the committee chairs a blank sheet of paper and says, tell us what you want. We've never operated that way. The budget that is up here to increase our assessment by $300, we didn't start work on that in September. We've been working on it since January. We've met, the amenities committee has met weekly, with maybe a couple of exceptions this entire year. Our average meeting runs 3 to 3.5 hours every single week. We sit in the TAC committee 3 or 4 times a year. You want to go over an hour in a meeting and drive John Wood nuts, that'll do it. But God bless him. He realizes sometimes we really got to figure some of this stuff out. And he's a wise counselor, and he's very helpful to us. So any criticism directed at him is totally misdirected. So there's another thing that plays around in the back of my mind, and I've woken every morning, or sometime during the night since our meeting Monday and Tuesday. I wake up in the middle of the night because this stuff really heavy on my mind. I love Cypresswood. I like my neighbors, and all of y'all are my neighbors, and all my board members are my neighbors. And I rode out today to Greenleaf, who used to be a premier golf community. And if you go out to Greenleaf, it's pretty. It's built in a beautiful wooded setting, but it's at the same time, all the golf courses are closed, all the tennis courts are closed, all the pools are closed. It's pretty, but it went away. And when I look at this, because some of you talk about you lived on a fixed income, well, so do I. And when I moved here, just like some of you, you know, the cost of that, when Mr. Wood was doing it and subsidizing it, to a lot of thousands of dollars per year, it was easy. But when this came to the board in 2017, when it wasn't practical anymore, it passed 12-2. But every single, the vote on the first loan was 14-0. The vote on the second loan was unanimous. The vote on every committee's budget was unanimous. And now we come to this one. And you say, well, how in the world could you go from 150 to 150 and then all of a sudden you've got to double that number? None of us are hired professionals, we're all volunteers. A lot of us, though, have a good business background. There's some politics involved in all of this. Let me talk to you all. There's some politics involved in what we do. When we sat in the RAC committee in 2018, and we were talking about this, the same thing went the next year. We knew that we needed $300 that first year. But politically, we knew that just wasn't, we weren't going to be able to accomplish it. So we split it in half. And we went 150 the next year. We knew then that we really should have gone 150 last year when we didn't do anything. I may get this a little bit wrong, but when we skipped a year, we didn't raise the assessment. In the meantime, the cost of everything's gone up, and looking at it, to talk about the pump, the community that's been griping about that pump since God knows when, we couldn't even consider that if we hadn't been putting $20,000 a year in reserve for 7 years. The boulevard that Bill Shire was talking about paving here, if we weren't putting something like $38,000 a year for, let's see, we're at, what do you know what that road reserve is right now?
264 at the end of the year.
So you divide that, we're putting about $38,000 a year, I think, into the reserve. If we hadn't been doing that all these years, we couldn't pay the boulevard. So if you don't build your reserves, you're still going to have to take on, it's not a wish list. What the amenities committee put up here, and what roads and drainage put up here, and what landscape put up here is not a wish list. If we want this beautiful community to exist as it is, then we're going to have to set aside reserves for it. And if we're having as hard a time as we're having now to increase the budget to what we need to cover our costs and to begin to set aside reserves we've not done for previously, if this fails and we have to pass a special assessment, and it wouldn't be in a small number, it's not like the $50 the one time we had one special assessment in 18 years I've lived here. It's not, it wouldn't be small. Well, if we can't pass this, how would we pass a special assessment amount of $1,000? It'd never fly. So then what do? Shut down the golf course, still gotta pay the $2 million. There's a 5-year comparison. Every president has this. Since the highest years starting in 2016, now this is from golf rounds, this isn't from anything else, selling any products and that kind of stuff in the clubhouse, just golf rounds. Produced $410,000. No, that was the income from it, 410. In 2017, it was $353,000. In 2018, it was $278,000. So we've done some golf course improvements. 2019, it was $396,000, and we were all dancing around in the amenities committee because the golf course now started to climb to where we hope it would be. But I said it last time, I have to say it again. We had more bookings for the use of this building by outside groups to pay us than we were going to be able to accept. So we were all really excited. Well, it evaporated. So when you look at golf course income, and people look at that, and I don't understand how you look at a number like that and you throw it out on the floor, and then you don't say, and our operating expenses was, so our net. And we're not talking income versus net, and we need to get down to that net. Well, we all know what it is, and we subsidize the golf course and have been for years and years and years. That's not new news. So I'm almost stunned for words. I want to make one more comment, because I hear it in my HOA, and some of the people in the audience have said it, and some of you presidents have said it to me about the pressure that you get from your residents that discounts how government functions. If we were to poll our residents before we had to make any important decision to affect the quality of this community, we couldn't pass anything. Oak Grove would have to shut down. If I'd have polled the residents on taking the road in, we had a road front. The first time we had to pave the roads, we didn't have any money. God bless John Wood, he loaned us the money at no interest. So that year, they started a road fund, $1,000 a year. So paid back the loan to Mr. Wood, and then I became president 2 or 3 years after that, and we boosted that road fund to $4,000 a year, and get ready to boost it to $5,000 a year. And we're going to be able to do it without raising our own HOA assessment. And then the last thing I want to say to you, under any circumstances that I can imagine, $2 million of debt is all that I want to see this community do. Could we sell bonds? Yes. But remember, bonds are debt. So the time comes, just like that bank loan, it's going to be called. Just like bonds, they're going to be called. We're talking about, and I wrote it down on my piece of paper. Right now, every resident in Cypresswood pays on the current assessment, pays $58 a month to the National Association. At the new rate of the $300 increase, it's $83. That's a $25 a month increase in the assessment. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why anybody thinks at such a low number we shouldn't pay as we go and maintain the beautiful community that we have. I really don't want to change. And I haven't approached any of you presidents that voted no. I don't have the right to tell you how to cast your vote, but somehow or the other, we've got to get it in our mind, and our community needs to get it in our minds. When you accept the position of president in your HOA, and the first year it came to me by default. I didn't want it. Nobody would take it. Well, once I'm there, I had an obligation to learn, so I started going to meetings. I started learning. I remember one time I called for a board workshop, and we'd never had one. And Bob agreed. We set a date. And this is the thing that you need to understand about committees. And John Wood called me a few days later. And he said, Mike, you asked for a board workshop. Here's the reasons that you said you wanted to have it. And you can have it. You're a board president. You want to have it, we're going to have it. But no single member, and remember, he was a state representative for several years. Nobody in the governing body could ever get a total handle on that state budget. We have to have committees, and we have to trust their judgment, and we base our votes on what they bring to us. There's another way to go about that. And I took his advice. I called Bob to cancel the workshop. I'm not going to do it. I joined RAC, I joined TAC. Everybody made me feel welcome. All my questions were answered honestly. But part of the reason is that over the 2 years before I joined that, when those financial statements came in, guys, and they're 20-something pages long, I print them. I print the full thing. John Wood used to sit next to me at some of these meetings. I'd be the only president in here to show up for last month's financials. And he knew I had them. So he'd say, Mike, you got that far? And he'd read the numbers. We've got to find a way to understand we wear two hats. And the second hat says that you don't poll your residents. You represent them, but you represent them two ways. You hear their concerns and you hear their views, but you've got to come down here and make a decision that not only protects your own HOA, but the community at large. And that's all I'm asking you to do.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Anybody else? Mr. McCollum?
Okay, I've heard a lot of people say John Wood kept the HO or the amenities dues low artificially while he was developing this community. John, how many properties do you own in here?
Probably between 70 and 80.
Okay. He pays the same thing that we do. So he is still supporting our amenities. But thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
It's a board meeting.
Yes, yep, I'm not.
Very quickly.
Am I gathering?
Steve, you said why are we here? Because we had a 7-7 and why are we, in other words, something did not pass. We have to pass a budget, that's why we're here. I think it's in our loan agreements, we have to have a budget, we have to show that to the bank. So we're here because we have to pass a budget.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Potter?
I know we're here to pass a budget, but we're voting on the same thing. The exact same thing. Also, your RAC committee, does that meet during the day? Or is that like after 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock?
It usually meets in the afternoon because that's when people could come when it was formed.
Okay. Is there like negotiation there?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to,
We,
because if it was during the day, I couldn't come.
once we said we'd meet at night and nobody came, so we went back to 1:30.
I understand. No, I get it. I just wanted to make that because I won't be able to come if, you know. Anyways, thank you.
Bob, may I, give me just 1 second.
1 second.
Some of the people that have brought up having the night meetings are people that work, like yourself.
Yeah, I want to be involved.
But if we had RAC meetings starting at 6 o'clock, if they continue in the same manner that they have since they started, you're going to be there till 9 o'clock or 9:30. So that's fine with some people, but it's not fine with a lot that have got to come home and take care of the kids and cook the supper and da. So, but that's why that is. We're not trying to avoid anybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Are there any compromises that can be made?
Do we have a question? We don't have a question. Do we have a motion and a second? Call for the question. Mr. Secretary, please call the severe roll call vote.
Okay. Eagle Pond,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Club Patio,
No.
Cypress Pond,
No.
Eagle Pond,
Yes.
What was Eagle Pond's vote?
Yes.
Enclave,
Yes.
Fairway Patio,
No.
Garden Patio,
No.
Golf Villas,
No.
Greenfield Village,
No.
Meadows,
Yes.
Oak Grove,
Yes.
Palma Lucia,
Yes.
Plantations,
Yes.
Sand Hill,
Yes.
Villas on the Green.
No.
Tied again.
It is 7-7, the motion fails.
Actually doesn't pass.
It doesn't pass, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Attorney, for that clarification. Are there anything else before the board? So ladies and gentlemen, where do we go from here? Do we have a workshop tomorrow night? Do we have a workshop tomorrow night? So we've got to get a budget, guys. It's your fiduciary responsibility to get a budget. Mr. Hammond, do you have a statement? Please come up there. Please, Mr. Hammond, you have to come here so we can see on YouTube land. Please. Thank you.
I'm just gonna make the motion that we have the workshop tomorrow night.
Oh, okay. Mr. Hammond has made such a motion. Do you have a second? Mr. Shire has made a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll have a motion, or we'll have a workshop tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Well, all those in favor, I guess we gotta approve the motion.
There is no other compromise solution by any member of the board tonight.
Is that the case? Is there no other?
I make a motion to keep the budget the same.
There's a motion and a second to have a workshop. We gotta deal with that, so we have to deal with one at a time. So, is there all those in favor of having the workshop tomorrow? Raise your hand, please. Let's do a hand vote just so I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that motion passes. Is there any other motions to be brought before the board? Mr. Potter, do we have a motion?
I vote that we keep it the same as the 23. Oh, I gotta make a motion. I make a motion that we keep it the same as
The motion for Mr. Potter is to keep the assessment at $700 from the Cypresswood Community Association.
and review it after a year, so we've all had a chance to.
There, we always review. So do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a second to that motion. Do we have let's do a roll call. Oh, discussion, excuse me. I'm sorry. You're right, thank you. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Ms. Palmer?
If we do
Ms.
that,
Palmer?
Yes, please.
Steve, if we do that, then you need to bring the budget specifically for those line items and show where you're going to cut so that we're gonna have the we'll keep the 700. In other words, you can't just say 700, you have to show where you're putting it and what items you're not going to fund.
I get it. I understand 100%.
Any other discussion on that? Mr. Brennan?
The only reason I said no is because we really don't know what the golf course is gonna do. The golf course, we can have more money around here than we can know what to do with it. But we still have to know what the golf course is gonna produce.
Okay, let me address that for you, because that's a.
So remember that the golf course is assigned in the documents with 150 units of assessment. So currently with $700, which is our current assessment, the maximum the golf course can pay is $105,000. If the assessment goes up to 1,000, it would be $150,000. It doesn't make any difference if the golf course would make $10 million next year. The maximum amount would be the $105,000. However, the amenities portion would not subsidize the golf operations in that case. So, you know, the documents are written, we could talk about changing the documents, but that is not what we have in place right now. So this budget, the maximum is $105,000 that could be contributed by the or the amenity operations to the Cypresswood Community Association as an assessment. Let's just make sure that's clear. Mr. Attorney, I see you shaking your head too. Agree, right?
Yeah,
okay. Thank you.
You're exactly right.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a sec. We got a second from Mr. Brennan. Do we have any other discussion on this 700?
I need to know what he's gonna cut, or what he's not gonna fund.
This
before
just
I can
happened
vote on it.
tonight. I mean, this just happened tonight.
That's what the workshop's for.
Are we gonna have some bars here?
Guys, can you be here tomorrow? If we
Is our attorney gonna be available?
I can make
I understand you just came up with it. What I'm saying is I don't wanna vote on it without seeing it.
You know what? I agree. I agree.
You withdraw your motion?
Yeah.
6 o'clock? Can you do tomorrow, 6 o'clock? Okay. Yeah, we can do it if you need us.
Mr. Hammond, do you want to make?
As soon as he decides that.
Okay, yeah, we have a motion. Mr. Potter?
We're gonna withdraw the motion.
Mr. Potter has withdrawn his motion.
I get it. Okay.
Is he going to withdraw his second?
Are you going to withdraw your second?
Whoever seconded, I didn't see.
Well, I have a question on it first.
Okay.
Aren't we required to give 48 hours notice or some kind of notice to everybody before we?
Not for a workshop. And not for any, not for me either.
Then we're not gonna vote tomorrow.
No, it's a workshop.
It's a workshop.
But not only that, but this is a continuation of the meeting, it's already been noticed.
Correct. Correct, you are correct. We are not going to adjourn this meeting. We will continue. We'll suspend it once again if that's the desire of the board. Mr. Hammond?
Now can I speak?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm Jim Hammond from Club Patio Homes. And I will propose an alternative funding for the budget. So, and I'll give that to Bob before I leave, so that that can be sent to everyone, adjusted before our workshop tomorrow. Okay?
You did make copies, right?
Huh?
You did make copies, right? You said.
Yeah, we can pass it out right now.
Okay, we'll pass that once
And
we're
it's not something cast in stone, but merely a
talking point at the workshop.
A template, yes.
Okay, anything else? Tomorrow at 6 o'clock then.